Yes, sir.
Can't see.
Because I was sitting over there.
All right. I think we've done it. Woohoo! All right. I want to welcome you all to another Wednesday night Conversations with Cougars. And I have the distinction of my guest tonight, may be the only student athlete to ever play at both Northview and Dothan as a student, and coach at both Northview and Dothan as a coach. I've got, of course, Janasky Fleming.
Hey, man, I mean, I never thought about that. You know, I never thought about that.
Well, you're the first person I've come across who has that distinction. If there are others, y'all tell me who they are, because I don't know who they are just yet, but I'm so glad to be chatting with you this evening. You look
Yes,
like
sir.
you did well.
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate it. I thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. These weekly conversations over the last few months have been so much fun for me. I hope that folks are enjoying it as well.
Oh yeah, I do. I really do, man. Just to hear some of the old stories, and you know, like I said, we're gonna get some of these younger guys in here to share their stuff too.
That is true. That's what we were talking about before we went live. We need some of the younger generation to come on and share their experiences, because some of these tall tales that I keep hearing are just getting taller and taller.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Some stretch of them are true, but I don't know about some of them.
yeah, man. You're getting some 111-yard touchdowns. Huh?
Oh my gosh, there were 90,000 people in the stadium that night.
That's right. That is right.
Well, Janasky, most of us know that you're currently the Dothan Wolves head basketball coach, but catch up, folks. Tell them what you've been doing the last couple of years, and tell us a little bit about your family and what's going on with all of that right now.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm married to Tamika Fleming, formerly Tamika Askew. She's a 91 graduate of Northview, and I like to kid with her about I think she's the first Northview graduate female to be a principal in Dothan City Schools. You know, I always ask her to find one, and she always tell me to be quiet. But I'm very proud of her and her accomplishments. She's now the principal at Hurd Elementary.
Awesome.
And loves that. And this is my 26th year in education, so she's starting her 24th in education. So she really loves it and enjoys it, and loved Northview, you know, and loved all that came with it. Our first child, Jalen, he graduated in 2017 from there, played basketball 4 years, and now is a senior in Troy, an education major, who's starting his senior year. And our daughter, Jalea, who's on the bowling team for the Dothan Wolves, was on that first ever Northview bowling team. Her 7th grade year, a lot of people don't know I was the first bowling coach, which I don't know very much about bowling, but she took bowling lessons as a small kid. And when the opportunity came, they asked, hey, if somebody will coach it, well, we're not going to pay you. And I thought, well, you know, my daughter loves bowling, you know, we'll have tryouts. She made the team. And so we did bowling. But I said, hey, after 1 year, someone else is going to have to pick it up because it's during basketball, you know. So I had someone help me out, but, you know, we got the bowling team started. And every year they usually go to the state champ. Last year they made it to the actual state championship. And, you know, they have a real competitive team. And I'm starting my 26th year in education, and been coaching. I started coaching boys basketball at Northview in 2009. 2010 was my first season. And before that, I coached the girls basketball team from 2003 to 2009.
Could you have ever imagined if somebody would have come up to you in 1992 and said, in 2017, whatever year it was, you're going to be coaching girls bowling?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh yeah, man. It was, but you know, it was fun. No one wanted to do it. So they gave me girls and boys because no one wanted to coach it without a supplement. You know, a lot of times, you know, the supplement is tied to it, but I was like, you know, this is the first ever bowling team, and Dothan didn't have bowling, just Northview. Right. So I was like, man, I think it'll be interesting. It'll be neat. You know, we have 2 bowling alleys, so we went back and forth between the 2 bowling alleys, and it wound up being fun. And when the schools combined, man, the kids that came from Dothan, they love it. They love it. So now just being one school, the kids really get into bowling, and people don't know bowling is pretty exciting.
It's certainly in that competitive context. I'm sure it's very exciting when you're coming down to one or two pins. But that's a great memory for you and your daughter to share as well.
Yeah.
Well, Janasky, I know that your 9th grade year was at Northview.
Correct.
Through 12th and graduated from Dothan High.
Right.
And before we go, talk to us about that changeover from Northview to Dothan. If you don't mind, what prompted it and what were you thinking at that time? And I want to find out about your middle school days too, but I'm always been curious about athletes who play at both schools.
Well, my mother, we all lived with my grandparents, my mother, my sister, and my grandmother and grandfather. And I grew up in Johnson Homes, and, you know, man, that was home to Mike Henry. That was home to Tim Whaley. You know, that was home to Ant Palmer, and man, just a whole host of athletes, Ratman, and, you know, his whole family, and Terry Powell. It was just the late Bo Brinkley, who played with you guys, just a bunch of great people. And my grandfather was a World War II veteran. And my uncle, Coach Fleming, Edward Fleming, who graduated from Dothan High, he had been on my grandfather about using his VA loan, you know, to get a house built. And my grandfather, I guess, had never thought of that. And my uncle was on him, you know, about using that VA. And when he had an opportunity, he actually went and took him to fill out the paperwork. There were 2 spots that he was given to build a house. He either could do it in Lakeview, which is Wilder Avenue, or in Bamadale. And my uncle, you know, wanted to know where the school, he was teaching in Eufaula, but he wanted to know where the school zones were. So Lakeview had Dothan High, and of course Bamadale, Young America was Northview. And he was like, we all went to Dothan High. So I guess that, you know, made him.
Oh,
she
wow.
was and the location of it was next door to one of my grandmother's best friends. And so he used his VA loan and got a house built on Wilder Avenue. So half of my 9th grade year, during JV basketball, there was no 9th grade basketball then. I made the basketball team, but it was so competitive, man. It was like 18 of us on the team. Coach Eugene Singletary was our coach, and man, we had a phenomenal team. You know, I rarely, you know, got to play, but I enjoyed it, man. And I had to leave during half of that year, and I moved and went to Dothan High. And I remember, you know, just vividly that day going to tell Coach Ragsdale, man. And, you know, I don't know what it was about that day. He brought me in and sat me down and talked to me, man. And, you know, that was the first time, you know, just having a coach, because I knew Coach Parrish and met Coach Parrish and was getting ready, of course, to look forward to working with Coach Parrish. But Coach Ragsdale didn't coach 9th grade, but he took up a lot of time. When I would go into PE, you know, he would talk with me about grades, and, you know, it was impressed that I did my schoolwork and kept, you know, myself out of trouble and everything. And so Coach Ragsdale and I would talk quite a bit. And man, I never forget sitting down and talking with him. And man, he was real instrumental in me just enjoying that whole student athlete process. And he made me feel like I was going to be missed, you know, by going to Dothan High. He really did.
That sounds like, I mean, Coach Ragsdale was always there for the.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You mentioned Mike Henry earlier. We had Mike on the program.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Mike is the basketball coach at Carroll High.
Carroll. Yes, sir.
With Dothan being 7A, Carroll being either 5 or 6A.
Yes, sir.
Will you guys compete against each other during the season?
Well, he sent me a text message today, because now the way basketball is now, you have 30 games you can play during the season. That counts tournaments. It used to be 20 dates and 3 tournaments. Now basketball, you can play a total of 30 games. So you can play unlimited tournaments before the area tournament, just so as long as you don't go over 30 games in the regular season. So right now we're at 29. And by the time he got the job, you know, most coaches will stop at 29 or 28. You know, it kind of gives you some room. You know, you don't want to schedule 30 and then you go over and your school is going to be penalized. So we're at 29. So today we've been texting back and forth about maybe getting the JV girls, 9th grade boys game.
Very good. That's great. That's
oh yeah.
Really. Oh yeah. Well, Janasky, I want to pause. I want to give some shout outs. We've got the new principal at Eufaula High School has just joined us.
Revis Gertman.
Good to see you, Revis. Coach Hicks. Mark Sappho, just a shout out to you.
Number 34.
That's right. Coach Josh Parrish, Keith Rice, Elaine Woods Johnson. Thank you guys for stopping by. We've got
Awesome.
Janasky Fleming. So we've got, and Shirley C., who still holds the distinction of having the most watched program video.
I bet, man. I bet. Dr. C. That's Dr. C. That is Dr. C.
Good to see you here, Professor Fleming.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Well,
That's
thank
Dr.
you
C.
for showing Janasky some much deserved love so far tonight. But
yes, sir.
Before you even went to Northview, where were your middle school or junior high years? Where'd you grow up, and who were your running around buddies back in that day?
Well, the strange thing about me, man, I've never stayed at a school the whole time. You know, even when I was smaller, we always would move, you know, here and there. We lived in Johnson Home, but my mom, you know, she got out and got on her own for a while. And, you know, I had to switch elementary schools. I went from Cloverdale to Stringer Street and then back to Stringer Street when we moved back to Johnson Homes. And then I started out my 6th grade year at Honeysuckle because we were, you know, we had a house on Range Street, and then we moved back to Johnson Homes and I went to Carver. And Carver is where I actually got a chance to play middle school football for Coach Richards, Billy Richards, who was meeting him was life changing, you know. And I know a lot of times the middle school coaches go unnoticed, but there were some heck of a middle school coaches, you know, back during those times. And man, Coach Richards, meeting Coach Richards and him, the confidence he gave me changed totally just how I view sports. And growing up wise, I mentioned John McGlone earlier, you know, John, Steve Brown, Gerald Rivers, Tony Franklin, Joe McNeely. It was a whole bunch of people in that age group that we had an opportunity to compete and have a good time. And we were seasonal back then. You know, we played sports whenever that season was in. If it was baseball season, we played pickup baseball. If it was basketball season, we played basketball. If it was football, we did football. And it was
there was no laying around the house.
No laying around the house. And if anybody said they could outrun you, you know, we'll meet in the street at Johnson Homes and we'll race in front of everybody, you know.
Now, it was your during the evening times, there were 2 ways that we got called to come back into the house. The street light on the corner.
Right.
Or the bell.
That's right.
How did you know when it was time to come on in?
Well, man, my hangout spot when I was growing up in Johnson Homes was Florida Avenue at Cassie Butler's house with his younger brother that was my age, Jerry Butler. Yeah. So, you know, I would go down on Florida Avenue, man. It would be me, Jerry Butler, Devane Turner, Kenny Black, man, Tony. I mean, we did everything down there, man. And Cassie, man, shout out to Cassie. Cassie used to bully us so bad, man, because he was, you know, I graduated you know, Cassie, you know, went to school with you, man. Cassie would make us play football, and he would be the linebacker, and he'd knock us out, man, half the time. And man, Cassie had us scared to do anything, man. And that joker was big and strong, and you know, he looked like he was 12 feet tall, man, from when I was little.
Hey, try playing against him, even on we were the same class. And man, occasional times when it'd be one-on-ones, you know, first team on first team.
Right.
And Willie Banks are staring me right across.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was just thankful on Friday nights that those guys were on my team.
Well, you know, and I would be on Florida Avenue, and my mom would walk out on the back porch, and she would yell my name, which, if you know, which Cassie lived right behind Aristotle Kirkland. That's Cass. So she would yell my name, and that was how I knew to come home. We didn't have a phone at that time, and she would just go out on the back porch and say my name as loud as she could, which, you know, there weren't any more Janaskys.
That's so, right.
You know, there was no, I thought you were talking to someone else. So that was that got me home.
Oh, that's awesome. Let's see. We've got, let's see. Oh, Jalen has joined us. Thank you, Jalen.
Jalen Fleming.
You're Jalen.
Oh my goodness, Jalen Fleming. Okay.
Revis says, good point, Flem. We had great middle school coaches in the 80s at all the middle schools.
We really did.
Joseph Johnson has joined us. Thank you, JJ, for stopping by.
Yes, sir.
And Shirley C sends some love to Revis, wishing him the best school year.
Yes, sir. Principal.
John Reddick, Pat Fitch have both joined us, so thank you, guys.
Pat Fitch, yes.
bunch of folks rolling in.
Well, you know, when we were in the ninth grade playing at Northview, you know, the main thing, you know, it was kind of embarrassing to have a right L helmet. We wanted to borrow you guys bike helmets. So, man, Patrick Fitch, O'Shawn Legree, and all that stuff, man, we would kind of wait for the varsity guys to finish practice and see if we can borrow their helmets for the ninth grade football game, man, because everybody wanted a bike helmet, you know, to have the chin straps up here and back there, man. You know, if you didn't have a bike helmet, you weren't cool. Yeah.
Well, it's, you know, these guys, all these names of these neighbors and buddies, such athletes. 2/3 of these guys' names all played on the next level and were serious contributors in high school as well. Speaking of a serious contributor, Kevin Jackson has just joined us. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Ike Jackson.
Well, did you know leaving 8th grade that you were definitely going to Northview that first for 9th grade?
I did. I didn't, at that time, I don't think my grandfather had even considered the house building part. Yeah, well, they did. They didn't tell me, but Coach Parrish would come over and speak to us during PE, you know, and my 8th grade year is the year that you guys won the state championship. So, I mean, it was the expectations, and everybody was excited. And, you know, even the kids that went to Carver that were going to Dothan High was excited. You know, it was because it was great football all around. You know, I was cognizant enough of football to remember the fact that Northview won the state, but Dothan High actually won the game that year. So it was very competitive, you know, and so it was just excitement all over the place. So I was looking forward to going to Northview, but my thing is that myself, I was a quarterback at Carver, and that's where I credit Coach Richards. I didn't think, and I'm just gonna, you know, put this out there and share this, man. I didn't think that I really would have a good chance at being a quarterback because of where I lived and where I was from. You know, I thought maybe, you know, people kind of took that into consideration. And my favorite football player at the time was a defensive back, because I thought I was gonna be a defensive back, man, was Everson Walls for the Cowboys.
Oh, sure.
So my 8th grade year, I got number 24, and, you know, I played 7th grade quarterback for Coach John Ivey. And, you know, I was like, well, I know in the 8th grade, you know, it'd be someone else. I got number 24, and I was, you know, working on backpedaling and tackling people. And, you know, Coach Richards, you know, asked me, why couldn't I be the quarterback, you know? And I was like, well, I don't know, you know? He was like, well, you should be the quarterback, and you're going to be the quarterback. So I spent that year as number 24 as the quarterback for Carver. And, you know, man, that just really him pouring that, you know, into me and doing stuff that coaches, that is one of the reasons why I wanted to go into education, because when I thought about the people that made a difference, you know, with me and believed in me, you know, he was one of the first to do that. So, you know, having that strong base and that strong foundation. And my mom was an athlete. My uncle played college football, and a lot of my other uncles played college sports. A lot of my grandmother's kids were all athletes. All the guys, most of them, you know, did athletic things. And I got cousins that played college football, and got cousins that, you know, played D1 this, D1 that. So sports was in my family. Very.
A lot of expectations. You got to uphold. The next generation's got to uphold what the previous has done.
Yeah.
Now, Janasky, who were some of the 8th grade Carver athletes who came with you at the same year over to Northview?
At the time, it was myself. That actually, some of them went to most of them, because we were split. A lot of the kids at Carver mostly went to Dothan High.
Right.
So, you know, a lot of the guys that played at Carver, I joined back up with when I transferred to Dothan High. And some of them that played with me at Carver didn't go out and play. And my 9th grade year, when I came to Northview, what was funny was there were 4 middle schools. So, Of course, there were 4 quarterbacks, and 3 of the quarterbacks ended up at Northview. So it was myself, it was Jody White, and his backup was Steve Brown at quarterback. And then we had Jackson Whaley from Girard. JP Potter ended up going to Dothan High, but the 3 of us, well, 4 counting Steve, was over there. And I was like, man, it's no way in the world I'm going to be the quarterback. You know, I see you got 6'6" Jody standing back there. So, you know, I ended up playing receiver and defensive back, and they made me play some quarterback anyway. But and it was funny because Jackson Whaley was a quarterback all his life, and when he got in the 9th grade, they made him into a center. So he went from. So we all were choosing different positions, and, you know, Jackson became the center. So, but as far as coming from Carver, there weren't, most of them went to Dothan High, and I joined back up with them at Dothan High.
Who were the coaches for the ninth grade football?
Ninth grade football was Coach Tribune and Coach Jerry Andrews was the head coach, and I think Singletary, he would come down there and just make, but he was with the varsity.
Sure.
And Coach Janasky helped us out. I remember he was helping us out.
Yeah, Richard was 2 years ahead of me.
Right.
Football and baseball. Gotta give you some more shout outs here, Janasky.
Yes, sir.
Josh Cobb has joined us. Brandon Brown has joined us. Tamika has joined us. Cornelius Bennett says to tell you hello.
Nene. Hey, I tell you what, man. I invited Kevin Dorsey. You know, he and Nene graduated together in '98 with Gabe and all of them, man. Nene is famous, man. He's a rundown guy. When we upset Dothan when they were number 1 in the state, Denise ran him down and ran Al down and got the strip fumble, you know. So yeah, Nene, Cornelius is a good guy.
Well, we may have to have Cornelius on here just for that one play to talk
That's
about.
That's right. I'm sure he has the footage.
Well, in ninth grade, you were still playing multiple sports, I assume. Did you play basketball, did you play baseball, or did you transfer? What time of the school year?
Well, I had crazy story. I made the JV basketball team because there was not ninth grade basketball, but they were having baseball tryouts, and my mom was big time softball player, and I had played baseball. Baseball was actually my best sport, you know, and that was the sport that I really honestly should have, you know, spent more time in, but I didn't. You know, of course, there weren't many travel teams and stuff like that, so I just didn't get to, you know, experience that side of it. But we had a basketball game, and they had baseball tryouts, and I didn't know that just because I was playing basketball, I wasn't supposed to go to baseball tryouts. So I went to baseball tryouts, and we're running around the school, and I see Coach Singletary, and he stops and said, "What are you running for?" I said, "Coach, I'm trying out for baseball." He said, "Son, we have a basketball game tonight." So I ended up leaving Northview during January of my freshman year. So when I went to Dothan High, of course, basketball was almost over. So I went on out and tried out and made the JV baseball team. Coach Addison was the JV baseball coach. So when I went to Dothan, I just immediately went to baseball. So I played all three for about 3 years. Well, actually at Dothan High, my 10th grade year, I did all 4. I ran track too, along with baseball and basketball and football. But I eventually stopped baseball.
Was that tough on you mentally to leave Northview, or were you looking forward to maybe joining other friends over at Dothan?
Well, I actually, what ended up happening, we were gonna work out a way. Our family had just got a vehicle, and we were gonna work out a way to drive from Lakeview to Northview, but someone, and I'm not gonna mention their name, but someone got word to me that I used to play baseball with, and their parent came to see me and said, "Hey, they're talking about turning you in, you know, if you don't, you know, come on and transfer to Dothan High." And I'm like, who are they? I said, "Well, you know, you may just want to come on because, you know, you don't want people to say anything." And that could have just been a story to scare me or whatever not. But I ended up, you know, just saying something to my grandparents and my mom. And then, you know, we went through the process of just, you know, getting transferred over. But it was more of I didn't really want to because of the fact that I kind of had established myself in the receiver, you know, defensive back type position. And I was good with that. You know, the only reason I went out for quarterback at Northview, not many people know this, the backup behind Brent Thomas had gotten injured in a JV game, a bad injury, and, you know, just didn't want to play quarterback anymore. You know, when I looked at the lines and saw it was only one quarterback when I was going to 10th grade, I said, well, let me jump in that line. You know, I could be the second guy, you know, all these other lines alone. And I know I can do it. So, you know, let me jump in that line. So that's how I ended up being, you know, one of the quarterbacks at Dothan.
It's always, you know, an athlete's journey is just, it's always interesting to me.
Oh, yeah.
You can't appreciate your accomplishments at the end of the journey until you realize all that you've had to go through. And nobody ever hands anything to you, but it just, from you switching schools in the middle of ninth grade and having to reestablish yourself with all new coaches who may have known of you, but
Right.
had coached you or had you on their squads.
Right.
It's almost as if you're starting over again in some regards.
And I tell you what, man, at Northview, the basketball team, we had these warm-ups, and they had the hood on them and everything. And, you know, of course, I had sense enough not to wear it at Dothan High, but I would wear it. It was cold where we worked out was different than the locker room at Dothan High. We had to walk outside to get there. So, man, I can remember, you know, putting that long sleeve Northview thing and putting shirts on top of it. But somehow or another, man, those jokers figured out what it was. And the next day when I came in, man, my locker was open and nothing was taken out of it except for that warm-up top, man. And I saw it in the trash can, and I was like, okay, I get it.
You got the message.
I got the message. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, let's take it into your sophomore year. You're now over at Dothan High.
Right.
You're starting to establish yourself as an athlete over there. Where were you playing? What level? Was it JV, varsity at this point? What positions? And just kind of take us through those 3 years of Dothan High. And what was it like? I want you to include, what was it then like competing against your former teammates and classmates at Northview in those games?
I think I was mentally prepared for it because I had never stayed at one school the whole time. You know, I switched elementary schools twice. I actually went to 3 or 4 elementary schools, and then getting into middle school, being at Honeysuckle, which in essence were a lot of the guys I went to Northview with in the 9th grade, then transferring to Carver to a lot of the kids I played with at Dothan High. You know, when I went to Dothan High, the first day I can remember they were setting up my schedule and they let me go to lunch while they were setting up my schedule. And I walked in the lunchroom and, you know, some of the guys I went to Carver with, man, they actually physically ran up to me and just, you know, like, man, we heard you were coming. We're glad. So, you know, that was a great transition. But going into my 10th grade year, I didn't expect to play because you talk about, man, Teapot and Brent and, you know, man, all those guys, Greg Townsend and, man, Terrence McCray and Sean Anderson, man, it was some Vince Coben, it was some heck of athletes, D.D. Ford, and man, it was.
Teapot hit me harder than I'd ever been in a game, or I mean, in any sport, anytime I'd ever competed. I threw interception my senior year, and he's running it back, and I'm going to go tackle him. I'm going to save the touchdown. He knocked me almost into the concrete wall past the cheerleaders.
Yeah, man, Teapot and I grew up together in Johnson Homes, and man, Teapot was real quiet and shy. I mean, we were actually, you know, when we were smaller, he was a couple of years older, but, you know, like when he was 10 and I was 8, you know, we were playing all that stuff. And then when he moved out of Johnson Homes, and when I went, I knew of him. I knew him. He was still, of course, in Dothan and playing sports, but I didn't see him all the time. So when I transferred to Dothan High, man, that was night and day. That was a totally different Teapot than what I grew up with, man. He was intense at practice. Every day was like the Super Bowl, you know, to him. And, you know, you learn quick. And I was, you know, being the backup quarterback, I was a scout team quarterback. So, man, Teapot, you know, I saw him. I mean, it was a goal of mine to stay away from Charles Brown. You know, that was my goal, you know, because I was elusive, man. And, you know, you get Teapot going in one head of steam, and I could always cut back against him, and he hated that, man. So, but I had to get him, you know, off of his strength because, man, he would hurt you. You know, Teapot wanted to hurt people. Yeah, he really did.
He was a heck of an athlete and very strong.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Dawsey says, "What's up, Coach Fleming?"
Eric Dawsey. Oh, Pastor Dawsey, I said, "What's up?" Tell Pastor.
And
but just that whole 10th grade experience was pretty good. We ran a pro style offense because Brent was a pro style quarterback.
Yeah.
He could throw it, you know, man, and he was strong and he was physical. And so whenever I got to play, I had to not only adapt to that, but they adapted the split backfield to some things that catered towards me. You know, we ran some option with it. We ran a lot of rollout passes, and, you know, you could run or throw, but I had to, of course, do some of the things that he did. And oddly enough, Britt got hurt one game, and he got hurt in practice. And so one game, my first actual start, we played Mosley, who was ranked number 3 in the country at the time. And they were, I was thinking, man, if this is going to be a game, I play my first game in, it's probably the wrong one. Man, they were one of the
big boy football.
Yeah, it was big boy football, man. I'm sitting there thinking, you picked the right game to miss, Brent, because those jokers were physical. I just won't ever forget, So, but you know what? I had a good squad with me, and that was a good way to get introduced to it, and it led me to getting to play a little bit more as the season went on, and got to do some situational stuff.
What grade were you in at that time?
I was in the 10th.
Yeah,
I was in the 10th, and Brent was a senior.
Yeah. And who were the varsity head coach during your years at Dothan?
Bobby Devane became Coach Golden, retired or stopped coaching, retired from coaching, being a head coach of football. But this coach, Ben Scott, was hired. He was this big time coach from Georgia, and he came over, and he didn't even stay through the spring. He left, and then Coach Bobby Devane, rest in peace, Coach Devane. Coach Devane became the head coach, and Coach Latta was the offensive coordinator. Coach Addison was the defensive coordinator. The late Terry Collins, who played a role in my life, kind of like Coach Billy Richards, was the defensive back coach my sophomore year. My uncle, Edward Fleming, came my senior year. Coach Joe Davis, who played an instrumental part of a lot of our lives, was one of the offensive line coaches. Coach Charles Davis, defensive line coach. It was a
lot of firepower right there. The coach.
Oh my God, Coach Norris was defensive end coach. It was man. There's great coaches all over, all throughout the city.
Well, I totally agree with that. Tell me a little bit about the Dothan Northview game each year.
Right.
It's by this point, of course, most of the guys know each other on both teams.
Right.
Actually, they may or may not admit there's actually a lot of friendships there, but you got to put that on hold when it's time to kick on Friday night.
That's right. That's right. Well, my 10th grade year was we were the visiting team. My 10th grade year and my senior year, that was kind of surprising because of the way the game ended. At the time, that was the biggest point differential. We ended up winning my sophomore year 34-3, and I don't really know. We were not 31 points better than Northview, but I think it just, when things kind of started to go downhill for Northview, it just kept going. And I remember Brent actually, I had started to play a little bit of situational football with I would go in and run some option, and Brent would come back in and do some things. But I remember that game, he ran the option, and Brent wasn't the fastest person in the world, but he ran the option for about maybe 40 or 50 yards all the way down to the goal line, and which they were carrying the games on the cable company back then. And, they were just kept saying, my goodness, we didn't think that Brent would do this. We thought this would be, Fleming doing this instead of Brent. So I think that kind of opened the game up some, and we ended up winning that. And that was a huge surprise to win by that point spread. And my 11th grade year was more, I think it was kind of 17-10 or something like that, 17-7, my 11th grade year. And we had a real good year. Greg Townsend was one of the best football players I had ever seen. And I never forget riding one day. He lived behind me in Lakeview, and I would ride to practice with him, and he opened up a trunk one day, and it had almost 100 to 150 letters from colleges. And I remember just thinking, man, this is all he had just about an offer from everyone. And I never forget when I asked him, I said, well, where are you going? And he stood up at attention and said, I'm a Marine. And I said, oh, okay. And he went to the Marines and retired from the Marines. He said that then. He said, I'm a Marine. And I said, oh, my goodness. But he was an outstanding football player. And that year, my junior year, is when Eric Easley and some of those guys were seniors at Northview. And, of course, knowing all them and growing up with all of them, still John and all them were in my grade. But, that was a good game. And my senior year was the 4 overtime game, of course, that we lost 34-28. And, that game is famous. A lot of people get on to me for they saying I fumbled the ball at the end of the game, but, which is a super interesting story behind that, man, with the guy that was my center at Dothan High. He passed away a few years back. Tad Gillen, he was sick and passed away, and man, may he rest in peace. Just a great guy. And he shared some stuff with me before he passed away at at our 10-year reunion that man, that just, it doesn't haunt me, but to this day, it just sticks with me. That how that game ended. He wanted to share his part of the story with me, but those were 3 years of some good games.
You never know how wins or losses, a good play or a bonus play, stick with an athlete during their life. A lot of times, if it's something that is not important to them or they want to put it away out of their memory, it just goes away. Oh yeah, that happened. I was a kid, big deal.
Right.
Others, it's a burden the rest of their life, and you just never know how it's going to affect you as an athlete or a former athlete.
Well, even outside of sports, I think most of the things that affect us as adults happen to us in our childhood, whether it was good or bad. So I think what a lot of people looked at as a downfall ended up kind of propelling me, to do more things and to show them more things. And my grandmother, always said, God doesn't allow you to accept things that you can't handle. If it's for you, that means you can handle it. So, that's always been kind of my mindset with it, that you can, if it's adversity, you can handle it. People go through worse.
Yeah, it certainly shapes your character. That's for sure. Well, by the time you're a senior, are you still playing all three sports, the seasonal sports?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I shouldn't have, I don't, I wish someone would have talked to me, but I replaced baseball with just track.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of I ran the 100 and the 200 and the relays and stuff like that. But I'd done football and basketball, and I started just doing track the whole time because I figured, kind of getting out of baseball, which I really wish I shouldn't have that, to work on speed and development and stuff like that. I did basketball because I loved it. And I, wasn't the best basketball player, but I was situational and, did some things that, if coach needed me to play defense or to, get someone the ball, I could. But what's interesting is now that the sport that I focus on more, it was in last place out of the four of my sports in high school. I just got into the schematics of basketball when I got out of high school, but I played all three. I did good in track and, basketball and football.
Well, I know that your post high school sports career kind of took a similar path.
Yes, sir.
You started at Wingate and then
yes, sir.
And ultimately at Troy. So how did you end up, first of all, going to Wingate as your first school out of high school?
Well, at the time I was trying to find somewhere to go. I had a couple of leads, a couple of people that were interested in me. Jacksonville State at the time, which was a Division II school, was very interested. But what really hurt me, and a lot of people didn't realize this. I didn't know it would do this, but playing quarterback hurt me as far as colleges go, because they didn't get to see that I could catch. They didn't get to see that I could backpedal and I could tackle and that I could do things like that. And, I think that really hurt me, especially at Jacksonville State, because it came down to me and another guy that actually played running back, and they were running the option. And, they were like, well, we're solid at quarterback, and these guys here, we know have been proven at running back. So at the time I was kind of, wondering, exactly where, the future would hold. I knew I would go to college, but I wanted to play sports. And this coach from Rickards, we played Rickards out of Tallahassee. They had Corey Fuller, who played at Florida State and with the Minnesota Vikings. And, we had beaten them our senior year, and they were highly ranked. And a coach from Rickards reached out to Wingate was at Rickards trying to recruit someone in Tallahassee. And I didn't even know the coach. And he told him, he said, hey, I tell you what, if you're looking for a receiver or an athlete, you need to go up to Dothan. They have a guy at Dothan High that just absolutely killed us. So, you may want to talk with him and see if he'd be interested in going. And Wingate was at that time an NAIA school and didn't give scholarships. And man, they came up and watched the film, and they asked me if I could come up there. So my uncles drove us up to North Carolina, up outside of Charlotte. And they said, man, look here, we like you. We like you so much. You can get your financial aid and we'll cover the rest, and you don't have to pay a dime. So I was like, oh, wow. And that time, that was at a time period, my mom had just passed away maybe 2 weeks before that. And, it just was a rough time, and I didn't know, so I thought, okay, I better go ahead and jump on this while it's a opportunity where I don't have to come out of pocket.
Sure.
And I ended up going up there and I was one of maybe 3 or 4 freshmen that got to actually play and not be redshirted that first year. So that's how I got to Wingate.
Wow. So take us through, keep coming in your journey. You ended up back in, or not back, but you ended up in Tallahassee at FAMU.
At FAMU, and I went down to FAMU at the time. J.P. Potter and Kevin Reeves and Scott Falk. Scott Falk's the principal at DPA, and Johnny Potter, he's a principal over in Georgia, and Kevin Reeves is a retired general. Falk and Kevin graduated from Northview in 90, and JP and I graduated from Dothan High in 90. And they were all in the band in the Marching 100. And so I was content on going down there and trying to walk on the football team. And I honestly went and spoke with the football coaches and didn't have a good, experience conversationally with them. And at the time, a good old Mike Henry was the grad assistant on the baseball team. And Mike said, hey, Flem, man, you still can play baseball. I know you can. He said, come try to walk on the baseball team. And Sean Branham, who I graduated with from Dothan High, was on scholarship on the baseball team. And I thought, well, if Mike is a grad assistant, I should have a good chance at making it. So I was in school at Florida A&M. I was working at Winn-Dixie, and I decided to go walk on the baseball team. And Coach Joe Durant was the coach, and I got a couple of tryouts, and he liked me, and he told me that I had to practice the whole year because I came so late, but I would have an opportunity to play the following year. So, man, I spent that whole year just practicing and really enjoyed it. And when I went and met with him at the end of the year with Coach Durant, he told me that baseball, of course, budget-wise was limited. And he told me that if they could do anything the following year, maybe they could pay for a couple of books. And I knew I didn't want to put my grandmother in that bind because she was back home with my sister, who was younger. And my mother had just passed away, and my grandfather had passed away a couple of years before that. So, I knew I was doing out-of-state fees, and I didn't want to put her in a bind. So I decided, I was like, man, you know what? I should have went to Troy and just walked on from the get-go anyway. And so, in which I ended up, I left Wingate. I played the whole year, but I left Wingate. It was just so far away from home, and just, not really knowing how mentally to deal with my mom just passing away, eventually made me want to get back closer to home.
Sure.
But ended up when I decided to go to Troy, I talked with Kevin Reeves, who was in the band at Florida A&M. He was like, man, you think about going to Troy? I want to go too, and I was like, you know what? I should have walked on there anyway. I remember Coach Turk. I went to camps when I was little, and Mike Turk was there, and I really liked him and enjoyed him. And so I went up there and met with him. And, it was, I had always been used to transferring schools. And I know that was my third school in my third year of college. And I said, this is going to be my last stop. This is where I graduate from. So I decided to go and walk on as a receiver. And they told me, of course, I had to practice the whole year and be on the scout team. But, again, I had been on the scout team with Teapot Brown. So I figured if I could handle that, man, I can handle other scout teams. So Revis was up there at the time, of course, playing. Tracy Donnell was up there playing at the time. John McGlone had went out and played, but then John had went to the military and was actually on his way back. So, I knew a lot of guys from up there. And so I decided to go ahead and walk on at Troy and give that a shot. Coach Blakeney, was real positive about it and said, if I showed, what I can do, I can, get an opportunity to play the following year.
Well, it certainly seemed like that Troy, once you got to Troy, you really found your.
Oh, yeah. Place. Oh, yeah. That was fun. That was fun.
After college, it didn't take you very long to find some coaching in the Wiregrass. I don't know if it was your first stop, but I know that you were at Enterprise for a while. But was that your first coaching endeavor?
It was. They had the educational recruiting seminars there, and of course, we would go around and we would, just fill out applications at each school system. Of course, the natural thing, people just said, just out of the box, hey, you're going to come back to Dothan. And of course, I filled out for applications for Dothan, but at the time, man, it was just so packed in education at Dothan and Northview that, it was tough getting in. And I filled out an interest for Houston County schools, and I had an interview with Houston County, and I filled out one with Enterprise. And the lead recruiter there was Dr. Bob Fairs. And my first actual interview was in East Point, Georgia. You know, Outkast was a famous group that we followed, and I just remember Outkast talking about East Point High and all that. I was like, man, you know what? You know, it may be a little rough for me as a teacher over there. So I decided just to give it a shot here, and I went and interviewed at the county. And actually, I walked in that interview, and that's the first time someone ever called me coach. And it just hit me different. So have a seat, coach. And I remember looking, and it was like, you better get used to that, you know. And I just wasn't used to that, you know. I was just Janasky. I interviewed and went out to Ashford with at the time the principal, Miss Shirley McCardle, and she offered me a job. And I went back home and thought about it. And Coach Bob, Dr. Fairs, called me from Enterprise and asked me would I come up there and interview up there in Enterprise. They had just had an opening come open. So when I went up there and interviewed, I remember walking in, and my wife now, her dad purchased me a briefcase for graduating from college. And I took that briefcase with me, and I had on a suit, and my grandmother said she wanted to ride with me. And, you know, she went and sat in the lobby, and, you know, she's just, man, people just gravitated to her, you know. And when I went in and interviewed in Enterprise, you interview with everybody. You know, you walk in and it's just a round table of people. And wow. Coach Bacon, you know, told me that, you know, when he saw me walk in with a suit and a briefcase, he said he knew that that's who his kids needed to see, someone like that. So I didn't know that that's what it was going to do, but that eventually, you know, that made a difference. You know, having my grandmother with me, you know, they kept talking with her, and, you know, and she was like, well, when he gets to the night, God has him, you know, we're not going to worry about that. You know, she was talking about all these other things. She didn't go in the interview with me. She just said in the,
you know, Janasky, you made a real impression. You made that, you know, you've always heard it your life. You know, your first impression is what people remember.
Yes,
and
sir.
Awesome advice by your grandmother.
Suit,
briefcase, setting the tone. But up to that point, you had not been coaching, but you certainly, you've listed for me in our talk, probably 25 different coaches tonight.
Right.
It's very clear to me, the impressions and the importance that it laid with you over the years to now. For 26 years, you've been giving back.
Right.
So many kids, so many students and athletes. And that's just, there's nothing better to me than being in a profession where you know you're making a difference, and being a coach, being an educator. My total props to you and your wife.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Out there. That's fantastic, because, you know, your personality is so infectious, and that smile and that energy that kids just crave from.
Right.
And I know you're not their friend, and make no mistake about that.
Right.
Not their friend. You're there to lead, you're there to teach, you're there to educate. And we're getting close toward the end of our conversation, and I don't want to gloss over your 26 years, but I want you to share, because I love hearing the journey, but I want you to share now some of your philosophies, some of what are those things that you're trying to instill with your players and with your students who you teach, and have done so for 26 years now.
Well, I think the important thing when you look at someone that grew up like I grew up, and still to this day, Bernard, I couldn't tell you how many games I've won and lost as a coach. When I interviewed for the Dothan Wolves basketball job, that's the first time I actually went back and counted wins and losses. It's something, of course, that I have access to keeping up with, but I don't keep up with that. What I do keep up with right now, I'm at 32 kids that I've ever coached that graduated from college. And I keep up with that number. Every year one graduates, you know, I like to know that, because of the simple fact that, you know, that's, you know, not a guaranteed ticket to success, but it sure does kind of, you know, increase the avenue for you. And out of those 32 kids, I think 16 of them are from single family homes. So, you know, to me, that makes the most difference when when a kid doesn't think that they can graduate from college or even let alone go to college. Just a couple of them getting ready to come out now, kind of the 2016, 2015 graduates that I coached and 2017 graduates that I coached that's about to graduate and add to that number. But a lot of them don't think that, you know, they have that capability in them. And, you know, when I think about myself living with my grandmother and grandfather and my mom and Johnson Homes and my sister and sometimes, you know, extended cousins. And, you know, I just think, well, you know, I know good and well that if I can do it, you know, that you can. And I think that's for me to instill academics and success has led to wins basketball wise, because if kids know that you are going to hold them accountable for their education, if you get kids that can think in the classroom and know how to conduct themselves, they'll know how to do that when they're on the court as well. So I think that philosophy has helped me schematically in coaching.
I'm sure that these philosophies, the methods and the way that you approach just trying to help that next generation get to their goals in life. I know that's got to be a satisfying feeling for you as an educator.
Oh, it is.
And as a coach. I know that the wins and losses, they take care of themselves. That's
right.
That's only, you know, a few years of a person's overall life, but the impressions that you're instilling on these kids last. Look at who you've mentioned. That's kind of where I'm going with this. Is who is your 8th grade coach that made all the difference for you?
Yes, sir. Billy Richards. Yes, sir.
You're now the coach Billy Richards for
right.
so many kids.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes,
That's
wow.
That's fantastic, Janasky. That's the kind of, and I know you're not looking for praise here. That's not why we're here. I to make sure that
I appreciate it. Though. I do. I appreciate it.
On that, and I know
I appreciate
some other folks sharing some love here. Oh, and Miss C always keeping us straight. She wanted to remind me that you're also a Dothan City Commissioner.
Oh my goodness, yeah. You know, it would take Dr. C to come to figure that out, man, and make and bring that back home to me. But you know, and also, Bernard, I want to say too, man, that you know, being a young coach and you know, having my uncle at Dothan High that was, you know, instrumental, but also having Floyd Griffin, you know, over at Northview, and man, not Coach Griffin, but I want to, man, send a shout out and rest in peace to Coach Billy Kennard. You know, he gave me a chance when I was in Enterprise. When we found out that my wife wouldn't be in Enterprise teaching, that she'd be somewhere else teaching, you know, I was asked to come to Denny's. Denny's was up near Northview at the time, and I sat down in a meeting with Coach Kennard. He wanted to go to Denny's, and we sat down, and he asked me, he said, "Why are you driving 30 minutes up there? You need to come over here and coach at Northview. You know, they're speaking highly of you." And, you know, that's how I got to Northview from Enterprise. You know, was meeting at Denny's with Coach Kennard.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Now, before we get out of here, Janasky, I want you to share with us a little bit. You know, we all want this pandemic to be over with. We're all tired of dealing with it, but we've still got to do the right thing. We got to social distance, wear a mask, all the things that we're being told to do. And some of us don't like to do it. But anyway, what does, I know you don't have any frontline coaching responsibilities for football with Dothan.
Right.
But tell us just for a minute or two, with school not starting for another 2 weeks or so, I know it's going to be in person, or you have the choice, have the choice. But if you're going to play on a sports team, you don't have a choice. You have to participate. So what can we expect? Are there going to be fans in the stands? Are there going to be different changes on the sidelines? Or are you knowledgeable about some of these things for the upcoming football and basketball seasons?
Well, I know that the football staff and our new athletic director met with the city leisure services directors. I didn't go to that meeting, but I know they were talking about fan-wise, you know, at the time that, you know, I think the other day they came up with a number like 3,000. I think the stadium can hold 9,000, but a total of maybe right now 3.
Wait. I clearly remember 30 or 40,000 coming to the Northview easily.
Hey, you know what? Hey, you know, that's the thing, man. You count everybody standing along the fence and outside the fence, it might be 30 or 40,000.
Last one out to, you know, turn off the lights to the city before you get to Rip Hughes. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, but so they're talking about how they're going to.
No, that's all right. That's what we get. Yeah, and I know one of the things maybe with concessions, concessions may not be in the area. They may be outside or somewhere where people can, get to it and without, being in a crowd. And I know the actual count is going to include band and everything. So, I know the numbers will be limited as far as football. I know basketball is a ways away. So I know I don't know if that'll be the same, but we had basketball workouts this summer. And, when every kid came in, they had to fill out a form asking, had they been exposed? They had to fill out a form asking, making sure that we had to take their temperature. We had to give them, we have gator masks for them. They would wear those during the actual basketball on-court workouts. And it's changed quite a bit. It really has.
Well, we certainly wish you the best of luck, continued health, and just doing all the things that you and your wife have done for many years with our kids in Dothan. And before we get out of here, Janasky, I got your old neighbor and the author of one of the greatest plays in Northview history, Aristotle Onassis Kirkland, has joined us.
Aristotle Onassis Kirkland. Picking up the fumble, man. Scoop up the fumble.
That's right. Changed our championship game. But
oh yeah.
Janasky, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Some incredible life lessons, and you just keep doing you, because what you're doing,
thank you, man.
Folks, I know they appreciate it. I know they do.
Man, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what it shares a lot of light, man. It's a lot of history.
Well, nobody has to thank me for this. This is a labor of love for me. I love these conversations.
Yes, sir.
Next week, he resides in the UK, but he's going to be in, I think, Dothan next week. But O'Shawn Legree is going to be.
O'Shawn Legree, okay. Hey, man. All right.
Cool. I know we got some great stories because it was O'Shawn who filled in when Lawrence got hurt.
Right. That's right.
Series, broke his arm, and little O'Shawn, I still remember his big wide eyes when he came into the huddle.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get into all that good stuff. But Janasky,
that's all right.
Thank you again, friend.
Thank you, Bernard. It's been an honor.
Well, very, very good. Guys, as we've been doing, we're going to keep on coming on Wednesday nights, conversations with Cougars, and please be patient. This pandemic will eventually leave. You hear me at the end of this every week, but even if you don't like wearing a mask for yourself, please do it for those around you and fellow man. You guys be well. Have a safe rest of your week, and we'll take
you too
next week.
Thank you, Bernard.